The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Dan Rylance and Cheryl Hentz here. I said Dan's name first because the camera was on him, but now it's back on me. But we're both here.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Tonight we're going to be talking with the Emergency Management Director for Winnebago County. Linda Kollman is here to join us. We were actually supposed to tape this show 2 weeks earlier, and as luck would have it, we had a horrible, horrible rainstorm and lots of flooding just the day before, and so Linda was just a little bit busy that night, and we certainly understood that, and we rescheduled her for tonight. So thanks for being here. No rain tonight.
No, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for
Nice to
inviting
meet you.
me.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Well, we're very happy to have you here, and we're going to be talking with you about storm preparedness and what people need to do to keep themselves and their families and their pets safe when weather is threatening. Certainly, a couple weeks ago, it was. I mean, it wasn't as bad as what we experienced, 3 or 4 years ago. You just said it was June of 2008. It seems like not that long ago, and yet, I guess maybe the older I get, time just flies more quickly. But anyway, I said that you couldn't make it 2 weeks ago because of the storm. Maybe we should start there. The storm was already over, and so tell us a little bit about what you do in your job that requires you to still be involved in things after the storm has passed, as they say.
Well, there's quite a few things that we do besides preparing for a storm and working with the storm spotters, getting information to the National Weather Service. We kick into a response mode and recovery. And some of the things we do, we had quite a few people, again, residents, who had some issues with water in their basement, unfortunately. And we work closely with the Red Cross. We give them addresses, information. The Red Cross stops there to offer them cleanup kits, just to do some checks on them to see if they need any assistance or if they need another place to stay as they clean up. So we field a lot of phone calls, and we work with the press and the media as well, trying to get information out that the Red Cross is available. We work closely with our 911 center, and when residents call in them as well, they also pass that information along to my office. And it's all about making sure that the residents are okay, cleaning up properly. We have some special needs residents out there who obviously can't clean up for themselves.
Right.
So then we work with 211 and other resources to find people to help them clean up and get them back on their feet again so that they can live in their homes properly.
Well, see, I didn't realize that you did all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, certainly I knew that you did more than this, but I think a lot of people just think, well, emergency management. They let people know that storms are coming, and they make sure that the tornado sirens work. And
I would never think to call their number. I mean, would you?
I wouldn't either.
No. And really, a lot of that started because of the June 2008 flood. I think a lot of the residents in the city of Oshkosh learned a lot, and obviously so did our office, because we've never dealt with something like that with that magnitude before. And a good part of the city was underwater, and a lot of people had a mess to clean up. We do have some things in place now, and so we are also better prepared in government to help out the residents. With that also comes some bad, because FEMA was here last time. We had so much in damages, as well as pretty much the whole bottom half of the southern part of Wisconsin. FEMA did declare, we got a presidential declaration here, so there were some dollars that were freed up to help people get back on their feet. That's not the case this time. We didn't have near that amount of damage. And I think residents were a little better prepared this time as well, so that they had either flood insurance, or they had plugs for their sewers, or they had their appliances, their water heaters and their furnaces up on blocks, so that when they did get 3, 4, 5 inches of water in the basement, it wasn't quite so bad. So we do a lot of outreach, try to get information out to residents. How can you be better prepared so the next time disaster strikes, it isn't that bad for them?
Well, obviously Oshkosh is the largest city in Winnebago County, but how much do you hear from people outside of the city? Maybe not with this last storm too much, huh?
Not really. A little bit in the town of Algoma. They were hit kind of hard. And I recall from the June 2008 flood, because I live out on the west side of Oshkosh, and I remember driving into town when it started, and it wasn't that bad. But this time, when I got up about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was called into work, and I don't think I've ever seen it that flooded in the town of Algoma where I live. So I knew it was going to be bad. But I don't think the city got it as bad as 2008. So I don't know if that's, you know, the difference the sewers are making. There's a lot of things that could be playing a part in that.
Do you think it might have something to do with the fact that there's so much construction going on in that Highway 21 area that's creating some more runoff that maybe you didn't have 4 years ago?
Well, one area of Highway 41 was shut down during 2 weeks ago, that Wednesday night. We did have a part of 41 shut down, and that doesn't happen very often. And it was a part of 41 that was not flooded in the past. So I have a
Where
feeling.
was it, Linda?
It was near Highway 26 in that area. So,
Okay.
and
I got you.
and I think that was the next morning, I think, is when that started. And, you know, that caused a lot of problems for people coming up from Fond du Lac and
Yep.
people trying to get to the Fond du Lac area to work. But that wasn't an issue in 2008. So I think as construction moves on and the city has done some, you know, made some great strides and improvements, I think that hopefully things will get better. It's not often, though, that we get 5 inches of rain in that short of a period of time. At my house, we received over 5 inches, and in other parts of the city, about 4. It's a lot of water for any city to handle.
Yeah, it is. When you were supposed to be here the last time, we were going to talk about an upcoming event. Now we'll talk about it sort of in the past. But May 9th, I believe it was NOAA Weather Radio Day. Yeah, May 9th. And you brought a weather radio with you tonight.
Yes.
What kind of things, what was your main message in advance of NOAA Weather Radio Day? What would you have been saying to people at that time?
Well, I think there's a misconception in the community that tornado sirens are meant to be heard in your homes. Those are outdoor warning sirens for people who are at outdoor events. We have, I think at this time, 52 sirens around Winnebago County. But if you're sleeping in the nighttime, your windows are closed, it's hot and humid, your air conditioning's running, it's not going to wake you up if you're in a good sleep. These NOAA weather radios have a tone alert that will wake you up. We suggest that you put them in your bedroom, you know, near your bed, so that you do get up. It's just like a smoke alarm for the house. You can have them set for whatever warnings you choose. I have it set for all at home, obviously, but you can have blizzard warnings, winter storms, flooding, severe thunderstorms, tornadoes. So these do go off. You plug them in, and then you have them on battery backup in case you lose power. Then they will still go off. So we encourage every household to have one. Not only that, but if the storms are bad enough, a siren can be taken out easily during a storm, and that has happened in storms in the past.
It has.
So
I was here when that happened, as a matter of fact.
What is the first name of it? You said
it's a this model is one that we sell at the sheriff's office.
okay.
NOAA, N-O-A-A.
Oh, NOAA.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and this is $24.90 plus tax. You can find them at Fleet Farm. I think other local hardware stores might sell them as well.
Does that mount on the wall at all? Is it mountable?
I don't. Well, maybe.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
There's. Yep.
Yep.
You can
Yeah,
mount
yeah.
that on the wall. You can set it
Sure.
on a desk or a table.
Yep.
Midland happens to make this one.
Yes.
But there are other manufacturers out there. NOAA stands for what? National Oceanographic. Oceanographic.
Atmospheric.
something or other, but it's along those lines. And so we don't have Midlands at home. But we have one on our upper level, we have one downstairs, and we even have one in the garage in case one of those sirens of yours would fail, and something, you know, because storms come up fast.
Yes, they do.
You know, very quickly.
Absolutely.
So if we're outside doing something or whatever, we've got one in the garage as well. And I know that every Wednesday at noon, NOAA sends out a test to make sure that it's working and everything.
You're really into this, aren't you?
Well, I like to be prepared.
I like that.
I like, and I will tell you that they go off immediately. I mean, because I've got weather alerts coming in on my cell phone too, so it can come in on the cell phone, and immediately, probably within a second or two, the weather radio is going off, or sometimes it's just vice versa, but it's instantaneous.
She calls with me with updates on storms. Seriously.
she?
I have given Dan some
very
updates.
nice
Good for you. Good for you. But you know what's interesting is I'm in the 911 center when severe weather is approaching, and how the 911 center finds out is they get a teletype from the National Weather Service. I happen to have a weather radio in my office. Sometimes the weather radio goes off before 911 knows, and the sirens are set off by the 911 dispatchers. So you will sometimes know by having a weather radio prior to a siren going off. So.
Yeah. And you said it's $20.99?
$24.90.
$24.99.
Yep, $24.90. And
$24.90 at
yes,
Fleet Farm.
No, at Sheriff's Office. We
Sheriff's
sell
Office.
them-
Sheriff's Office.
Yes, we sell them for cost. We want everybody to be able to afford one.
Wow.
I'm not sure. I think the price is very close at Fleet Farm and some of the other retailers. But we want to make it affordable because we want everybody to have one.
Okay. So if people want to go to the Sheriff's Office, then they just go to the Sheriff's Department, and who would they make their check out to?
Winnebago County Treasurer.
Okay.
Monday through Friday, 8 till 4:30. If you come to the Sheriff's Office, it's to your left of the records window. The girls will be happy to help you there.
Very good.
Okay. Good. And so I never heard of NOAA Weather Radio Day, but is that just a day that people are trying to, you know, get the word out about
Yes,
these?
absolutely.
Okay.
Just like Tornado or Severe Weather Awareness Week. The state of Wisconsin, the National Weather Service, everyone is really pushing for everyone to have a NOAA weather radio.
Well, I think it makes good sense. It's, like you said, no different than a smoke detector, a carbon monoxide detector, you know. I don't know that we'll ever see the day that we have a state law that says every home must have one, but you know, I think they're a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. So let's talk about severe weather preparedness. There's all kinds of severe weather that you can, you know, get in these parts of the country and have to be prepared for. But we're going into, you know, the summer months. We're in tornado season right now. And so why don't we talk about, you know, how one prepares for bad storms such as what we had 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up on your cell phone, do you get text message alerts?
Yes.
That is something new that is just coming out now. The federal government has worked with the cell phone companies. You do not have to sign cell phones up anymore. And you will start receiving emergency alerts on your cell phone text messages. I think they want to start the process in June. Most of the cell phone companies in the area have agreed, and you will start to receive this based on where you're located, what cell phone tower you're bouncing off of. You can get a text message that you're under a tornado warning or a tornado watch. I think that's great news because so many people are now cellular. They no longer have landlines at home, and I think it's a great tool. It's the new wireless emergency alert system, and then you also will get presidential alerts and amber alerts, and that's something new coming out. So that is a great preparedness tool that they are working on nationally, so I'm excited about that. Another thing you can do is flood insurance. And I know you and I had a conversation about that, how important it is, and knowing the difference between flood insurance and a sewer backup rider or a water issue in your home. I think a lot of people discovered, unfortunately, during the June 2008 floods that they might have had the wrong type of insurance. If they had water pouring in their basement from their doors or from their windows in the basement, sewer backup didn't cover that. And vice versa, if you had things coming up, if you have a bathroom in your basement and things were coming up your shower or your toilet or your sewer, flood insurance does not cover that type of damages. So we encourage all citizens, everyone is eligible. If your insurance agent says you're not, you are. We are we do have a good flood plan flood approved plan or flood program approved with our planning and zoning departments. We're in good standing, so everyone is eligible, including renters. So if you are a renter of a property, you also need to get the same thing, either flood insurance or the sewer water backup insurance. Right.
You recommend both?
I do recommend both, and I think it's very important, depending on where you live, and the cost could be up higher or lower, but it can be anywhere between $100 a year and $300 a year, maybe even a little more. It depends where your residence is.
If I'm at 9th in Ohio,
that would probably be a really wise thing to have in that
and
area.
my premium might be substantially higher.
Yeah, that's something you'd have to talk to your insurance
I don't live
agent
there,
about.
but I mean, that is an area that we always...
Yeah, unfortunately, they have had some problems there, and I know a lot of residents have gone on and worked with their insurance agent to obtain either flood insurance or the sewer rider, and we really recommend it.
Let me ask this question. I'm maybe going to be dating myself a little bit here, but you know, when I was a kid growing up, we were always taught that if you've got a basement and there's a tornado coming, or really super strong winds, you're supposed to go to now let me think about the house. Yes, southwest corner of the basement. Is that still the norm? Is that still what's recommended?
No, just getting in your basement.
Okay.
Stay away from windows. If you have a small enclosed room in your basement, they suggest that you go in there under a table if possible, or under something sturdy. But it's no longer required that you go into a certain corner. And there's also something else that I think people, when there's tornadoes and you're caught outdoors, they think you should go under an overpass and hide out there. That's not the case either anymore. That actually is a wind tunnel. So they suggest, you know, if you can't outrun a tornado, find a sturdy structure. If you can't get in a sturdy structure, go into a ditch. If the ditch is flooding, get back in your vehicle, buckle into your seat belt, and try to duck below the dash if you can, or put a blanket over you and stay right in your vehicle. Because so many vehicles have airbags now, they provide a little bit more safety in a vehicle.
Sure, sure. You know, the other thing that I always heard as a kid, and I think that this may be a myth, you may prove me wrong though, they always said if there's a tornado coming, open your windows so that you don't have that combustibility in your home. And yet, I've heard over the years that that's just an old wives' tale, it's a myth, there's nothing to it. Have you heard that?
Yes, and we used to do the same thing growing up. I heard the same thing, but it doesn't matter anymore whether you open a window or not. You're probably better off keeping your window shut so that if the tornado does not hit your home, it doesn't cause wind damage to anything inside your home. You might be better off just keeping them shut.
The main thing is don't be by the windows.
Don't be by the windows, absolutely. Stay away from windows.
Yeah, yeah.
I still like the southwest corner. I still would do that.
Would you?
I would. Now, maybe growing up on the plains, but, you know, I used to teach North Dakota history, and I can tell you that the southwest corner of where the tornadoes come, where the winds comes from in the plains, is basically southwest for tornadoes.
And that's probably why they said that.
And it may be different in Wisconsin. You know, your wind flows, you got the lake and you got different things. But when a tornado comes on the plains, you know, 8 times out of 10 or 7, it's going to come from the southwest.
You know, you hear so many people who they don't. The tornado sirens can go off, and they don't even bat an eye. They just continue to sit there and watch TV.
They go outside and watch.
Or they go, with their video cameras to try and catch something. You know, I mean, I guess people can call me a wuss if they want. I just think it's good precaution to take. If the sirens are going off, I head downstairs.
Thank you, because that's what you should do.
Yeah.
The National Weather Service just did a study of Joplin, Missouri, and they discovered that 2 to 9 risk factors were needed by citizens before they took action. So if they heard the siren go, they would go outside to see what why are the sirens going off, or they'd quick run to their television to see, or call somebody or get on the internet. They actually feel lives were lost in Joplin because people wanted to verify why the sirens were going off. I'll tell you, here in Winnebago County, we only sound the sirens if there is a tornado verified by spotters somewhere in Winnebago County. I'll only sound the sirens in a zone where that is actually under a tornado warning, or as close to as I can. But we only sound them if the National Weather Service puts us under a warning. If we have 2 trained weather spotters who spot the tornadoes and verify before the National Weather Service does, we'll sound them. or if we have winds in excess of 90 miles per hour. So in all three cases, there is definitely, it's definitely necessary to take cover. I don't sound them for any other reason, not for chemical spills or any other reason. So we really want people to take action. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. But I'm even a little bit more anal than that because, my dogs are my family as well, and I think people who have pets, I think most people do feel that way. But, you take your pets downstairs with you.
Yes.
But if there's really strong winds or a tornado that hits your house, you can't possibly, in all that commotion, be holding on to your pets. So see, I take it one step further. I keep leashes right by the steps. If we have to head downstairs, we grab those leashes and we hook them up and we tie the leashes around our waists so that we can keep our hands free.
Oh, that's good.
And the dogs, because we just heard this a few weeks back when tornadoes hit another part of the country. I saw a video on TV where a dog had gone down in the basement with its owners, but then during all the commotion, as the roof was being ripped off, it ran upstairs.
Oh.
Now, it was still safe. It headed to its favorite spot on the couch, and thankfully it was still safe. But, that's just how quick, in the commotion of everything going on, an animal can get away from you, and you need to keep your hands free. So I don't know. Maybe sometimes people think I over prepare a little bit.
I don't think you can ever over prepare. And you bring up a very good point with pets. Pets, pills, and purses. Those are three things that we suggest that you
Don't
have.
forget your purse.
It's the pills I'm worried about.
Those are three things you want. And pets, you're right. That is a lot of people. That is their children. And you want to make sure that you have canned food in your basement, and bottled water, and in a disaster kit. You can find some great. We have these brochures. I know City Hall has these brochures as well. There's some great information in here on having a disaster kit for your home. And then having copies of your prescriptions in there in case your home does get destroyed. You have that information in a kit and with you when you're in your basement.
And the Red Cross sells those, do they not?
Yes,
sell
they do.
these kits.
Yes, the Red Cross does sell them. And we just did a presentation, Nick Kleppert from the Red Cross and I did it to some businesses here on how they can get their employees ready. And he had one of his kits available, and they're great. And if it's too expensive to buy one all at once, start a kit, take 12 months. Every month, everything that you need for a kit is in this brochure. Buy one thing a month, and if it takes a year to put your kit together, it does. But any type of preparedness activity you choose is a good step forward.
How are those distributed? I know you said you can get them at City Hall and obviously at the county. Didn't those used to come out in the mail or something?
We did get a grant years ago. Very good. You remember that.
See?
They were green covered. And we did mail them out, but as you know, money is tight now, so the grant funds aren't available. But you can pick these up. There's just a little bit, that needs to be updated. Oshkosh Public Health is now part of Winnebago County Health, so there's some telephone numbers that changed. But the basic information here is great, and you can pick them up at City Hall, the Sheriff's Office. I think Human Services has them as well in Neenah and in Oshkosh. Call Emergency Management if you want. We can mail you one as well.
They could pick that up at the same time they're getting their weather radio.
Yes, good idea.
Can I turn to terrorism for a minute?
Sure.
Were you director after 9/11?
I actually was in HR during 2011, and it was then that actually caused me to go into emergency management. Mm-hmm.
So you would be in charge of, God forbid, a terrorist attack, that your office would be?
We would be involved, correct.
Okay. And what would be your involvement?
We have what we call an emergency operations center, and it's where all the heads of agencies get together and make decisions or do a response. So we are in charge of the emergency operations center, and we'd get it up and running, and I would run that with your local law enforcement agencies, fire, EMS, and it really depends on what type of terrorist attack we're talking about, if it's a chemical situation or if it's some sort of shooter, all different scenarios, but we would be involved.
What's your greatest fear to handle?
My greatest fear is I don't want to focus on terrorism. I think our more likely disaster is a natural disaster. And my greatest fear is a tornado, actually, coming right through the heart of our city of Oshkosh or Neenah Menasha.
Sure.
We are prepared for terrorism. We have a lot of things in place, and we received a lot of grant money over the years, over $1 million. My office worked with all our first responder agencies and got them better equipment so that they're better prepared. And we got a lot of training in that. But I think our more likely disaster is, and
I'm glad you say that, because I think there was some exaggerated paranoia, reasonably after 9/11. But remember the color codes they used to get? I mean, those color codes had no relationship to Oshkosh or lots. But you know, oh God, we're a different color zone today. You know, remember those?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very well.
Yeah, you're probably down in the basement.
No, not for different colors.
Okay, but yeah. So you would be involved clearly in a main way in
absolutely. And our role would be communication, working with the public, getting information out, working with the media, and whatever resources any of our agencies would need, and then working with the public as well. But again, the FBI, all the different systems in place now, they're sharing more information with us, so we know more what is going on all over the United States. And I get a daily bulletin from the state of Wisconsin, and just kind of giving us heads up on what's going around the United States, so that we have a heads up what we can watch for here and be better prepared as well.
Do you have key people in the county that either are on a board or a committee that you know, are like 10 people? There's one in Menasha, one in Neenah, one here that you.
We're part of the Winnebago County. I'm an employee, but our committee is the exact same committee as Judiciary. So I have 5 county supervisors that I answer to, and we work closely, meet about monthly, and discuss things.
Okay.
What about weather spotters? How many weather spotters do you have in the county, and how does one go about becoming a weather spotter?
That's a great question. The National Weather Service comes to Oshkosh every year, and they do a presentation in the spring, and it's a basic for weather spotter training, and you can get trained to be a weather spotter for the National Weather Service, and you call information into them. We work really closely with the ham radio operators in Winnebago County. So when the severe weather, we get some sort of alerts from the National Weather Service, heads up, then what I do is I work with our ham group. We send them to different spots throughout Winnebago County. We have pre-designated spots that have a higher view, and then we send them all over, and then I'm right next to the 911 center, and then they call in information to us and the National Weather Service at the same time. Omro Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department are spotters for us as well, because our weather comes normally from the west, and so they're right on it right away, and they can tell us what's coming. And then we send law enforcement officers out as well. Neenah Menasha Fire, sometimes they call information. So we have a lot of spotters out there that give us some good information to get
She's Ian Oshkosh, you know, and she's half weather reporter now. Remember we were talking earlier about, you'd make an excellent. You really would. You should think about that.
Well, thank you. We'll see.
We get a lot of people that call the 911
Really?
center with what they see.
Seriously.
And then if you're not a trained spotter, then we'll send an officer or somebody over there to verify what you're seeing. So it all is important.
Yeah. Real quickly, I think most people know this, but in case there's any question, can you just differentiate very quickly the difference between a watch and a warning?
Absolutely, and that a lot of people still have problems with that, so I'm glad you brought that up. A watch means that conditions are favorable. Keep your eye on the sky and watch for something to come. A warning means take action now, take cover. It means it's imminent, or something already is developing and destroying something. So watch, keep your eye out on the sky, warning, take cover. Okay.
All right, and so that would take up both my eyes, because I've got an eye on Oshkosh, I've got an eye on the sky, so I'm out of eyes.
Wonderful.
All right, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it,
Thank you
and
for
for doing the
Very
good job
informative,
that
Linda.
you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Mark Rohloff will be here, the city manager, and I think Dave Patek might be joining him as well, and we're going to talk about the city's response to the storms from 2 weeks ago. We'll be right back.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
And welcome back to Eye on Oshkosh. Mark Rohloff and Dave Patek are here now. Mark, of course, is the city manager for the city, and Dave is the director of public works for the city. And thanks to both of you for being here. We appreciate it.
Oh, happy to
Mark
do
is a frequent guest and an old friend here on Eye on Oshkosh. Dave, I think this is your, second time on, or is it
Seen him
third?
for a while, yeah.
Yeah. But we're always happy to have you.
He works behind the scenes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we want to talk about the storm from 2 weeks ago, which we just kind of talked about with Linda as well, but from the city's perspective. And, a lot of people still got flooded out this last, round of storms that we had a couple weeks back. And not to the extent that we had in 2008, certainly, but still a lot of people, and especially, it seems like, along Ohio Street and some of those side streets on the south part of town. Wasn't the city going to be doing some kind of road construction over there, reconstruction, that was going to help solve this problem for those folks?
I'll start and I'll have Dave fill in the blanks because Dave has more of the details. We did a lot of work in the area of 5th and Ohio Street, and what was done was we redid all the utilities underground. That included water, sanitary sewer, as well as storm sewer. But 5th and Ohio also is in the area where an interceptor sewer comes from the north side of town, crosses the river, and then proceeds west along 4th over to the treatment plant. And what we still have a problem with in the city is, even though we took care of that immediate problem in that area, we still have what's called an inflow and infiltration problem. That's I&I for short. And we did a videotaping of some brand new sanitary sewers on the north side right after a pretty moderate half-inch storm in April. And middle of the day type of videotaping, and the sewer was filled with water. Now, unless people are doing massive showers and flushing of toilets at 10 in the morning, the chances are that that didn't happen. What really was happening was we still have an inflow of water from your foundation drains, sump pumps, and primarily the older areas of town that are probably not even known to the property owners. They inherited these properties over time. They inherited it not knowing what was there. And the water goes over to Broad Street in the north and east side of the city. It goes onto Broad Street. We have a sewer pump station that pumps the sewage from that area of town underneath the river over to 4th. Once it gets over there, the sewage is not going back to the north side. It stays on the south side, heading towards the treatment plant. Well, when we have that much water, our normal flowage into the treatment plant, average day, 12 to 18 million gallons. Our plant's capacity is at 100 million gallons. So we can handle a lot of sewage, but we're not designed to handle rainwater. And there was so much rainwater that's getting into our sanitary system that it's backing up. And what happens is the areas in 5th and Ohio, in spite of the fact that they're all taken care of on the local sewers, that interceptor sewer backs up, and then it finds the path of least resistance to go up, and gravity goes back into a lot of the homes. I talked to some residents there who have what are called backflow preventers. No problem. The people who had no backflow preventers or had another version of something to try to hold the water back, it's sort of, for lack of a better term, like a big cork or a screw. Those things don't hold up as well as a true backflow preventer, and those either popped, or with no backflow prevention, it pushed it back into the poor folks that live in that area. So we have an inflow problem of stormwater, clear water, into our sanitary systems that we still have to address. And that's really the next phase of things we need to focus on.
Backflow preventers. There's a couple little pictures here on some of the literature that you guys brought. I don't think that people will really be able to see those, but we've talked about those before. I think it was when you were back on the last time, Dave. And you know, these are things, and by the way, I suggested that this be put on the city's website, and it looks like you guys are going to do that, so thank you for that.
Thank you for the suggestion. I mean, this is how we do it.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, because people don't really know what they are or what they do. You kind of told us a little bit now about what they do. How do they go about getting these things, and how do they know if they even need one?
Well, I'll let Dave explain some of the details of it, but if you don't have one, you should get one. So how do you know if you need one?
Water your basement.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now, I just talked to a plumber yesterday because I had one out for something else. And because of the way our house is built and so forth, he looked down in our sewer and down the drain, and he said, God, he said, you guys have like 2 feet or more of water. It's down like 2 or 3 feet, you know. He said, I think probably your neighbors are, you know, taking whatever would normally come this way. Not that we've had any neighbors being flooded either. I mean, there's some pumps are running all the time. So he didn't think that we needed one of those as much as I was trying to, you know, give him a little extra business here. And he did mention that other little contraption that you can kind of screw on and that kind of thing. But he didn't think we needed that either. So I don't know. But most people, I think, probably need something, right?
Well, and you can, if you look at the codes from other communities like Green Bay or Appleton and Sheboygan, which we've been checking, they have exceptions. If you have a home that's at a certain grade where it's calculated that you won't have a backup, they allow exceptions. But in normal situations where you have a community on the lake or close to a body of water where the topography is very flat, we would do, as Mark indicated, recommend that you have a backflow preventer. You never know, and it doesn't, backflow prevention is not just related to a storm event. You can have people that don't understand how sanitary sewer operates and may flush, say, you shouldn't flush diapers down a sanitary sewer. If things get plugged up, they might actually go down the line far enough that they cause a problem to a neighbor a block away. So they wouldn't cause a problem at your house, but if the neighbor a block away didn't have a backflow preventer when the diapers plugged up the line, they would have a problem. Or we see it where restaurants have a grease trap that's not working. The grease is going in the line and it causes a blockage. And that's what typically we find is that a neighbor several blocks away from the restaurant has a backup because the grease is blocking the line. It goes into a person's home. It's nothing to do with a storm. It's just operations of the sanitary sewer system. So in many situations, we just don't have the topography here. We don't. If your house is lucky enough to be high that your plumber thinks you don't need a backflow preventer, you did a good purchase with the purchase of your home. There's a lot of people that aren't so lucky. Right.
Yeah. Well, I still may want to go with, you know, something else. I don't know that I would go with something like this necessarily. But how do people go about getting these? Do they have to be installed by a plumber? Do they have to get a permit from the city to have these installed? How does this work?
Any work on your plumbing system would need a permit. Now, the first people you should talk to are the city plumbing inspectors, because I believe there are some exceptions in the state plumbing code that allow a property owner to work on the plumbing at their home. But some of these are complicated enough that we typically recommend that you talk to a licensed plumber and you use that expertise to help you provide the best facility at your home.
And all of our plumbing inspectors are master plumbers, so they know that. They can't tell you specifically what model to buy, but they can explain how the different models work. We have a couple samples in the inspections office that you can take a look at. And
What's the ballpark figure cost on these?
Well, it ranges. I know you can get some very cheaply at a home improvement store, and they can go up, upwards of over $1,000 if you really want to get fancy. I had a plumber tell me once they thought for $100 you get a decent backflow preventer. It'll take care of most of your problems. So they really do vary widely.
A couple $100 would be.
Well, and as Mark says, you can do things where you can buy a backflow preventer just for your floor drain. Well, then if you cover your floor drains, but it comes out the laundry sink, you haven't covered everything.
Right.
This example we're showing you here is something you would have a plumber put on your lateral, so as all the flow
Controls everything.
that was coming out of your building would be protected, right? So there's different ways to do it. Some people actually put things like a gate valve so that they have extra protection. There's some local plumbers that do that. This sort of valve is just a flapper. You can see, so from right to left, the flow is coming out of your home. As the flow pushes open this flap, it goes out to the sewer. But then if there's water backing up, this flap valve is shut and water can't get into your home. So there's different ways it operates. But like Mark said, you can go from the very simple things like plugs in your floor drain, which you could probably get several of those for $100 or something like that. But if you want to install something like this, it's likely to be closer to $1,000.
Could you tell us, engineer-wise, what areas of the city should have these?
Well, like Dave said, topography is a big consideration.
Okay, so it could be one block and not another within an area? Is that...
But the closer you are to an interceptor sewer, when an interceptor sewer gets overwhelmed and it starts to back up, the closer you are to an interceptor sewer, the more likely you are to have a problem as it backs up. And most of the complaints we got were due to properties that were relatively close to an interceptor
Do you think
sewer.
homeowners know that?
No.
No.
I would say no. If you know that if you've had the experience as you said, you're probably on the line, and you could always ask. But excuse me, chances are, if your neighborhood's experienced this, you're probably in that vicinity.
Does anyone mandate these for certain areas of cities?
Some communities do.
In Green Bay, for instance, you're required to put a backflow preventer in any new construction and into older buildings. So those are some sort of requirements we're looking at implementing also, because I can't say that we would have any area of the city that would have enough topography to have protection. I know there's certain areas where you have an older building. When they built the building, and you can drive around and see, it looks like the basement is several feet out of the ground. Well, in that case, the original sewers were so shallow that that's the only way they could get service was to raise the building up. Now, many new buildings don't have that. I mean, they might be only a foot out of the ground or something like that, not the 3 feet. And I'm not sure what your building is, but if it's an older building or a newer building, and you can have different sort of protection if you have a bi-level where you don't have a full basement. And then you can even have buildings right next to each other where typically a builder would look at the grade of the building in relation to like the top of the curb in front of the building. So you can have a building that was built maybe just 1 foot above the top of curb right next to a building that was built where somebody was more cautious and went 3 feet above the top of curb. So that person has much more protection because they're much higher than the sewer.
Yeah, ours is a bi-level, and the plumber said that definitely is helping us.
Right.
And that's probably why it was your situation.
Yeah.
But generally, if your neighbors or your area has had an experience, with backed up basements, you probably want to take that precaution more so than others.
One of the other things that we've heard in recent storms is the way people have their sump pumps hooked up. And can we just talk about that briefly again? And you know, maybe that's something else you guys could put on the website. See, I'm going to keep your IT guy busy here. You know, but put on there, you know, how these things should be hooked up so that they're not running into the wrong drains, causing more flooding.
That's something that is required. You are not allowed to direct any sump water or foundation water into the sanitary system. I think the problem that we have is that, and I was explaining this a couple weeks ago to some of the council members, is that years ago Oshkosh was very progressive. We had modern sewer systems, but modern at the time meant that we took all of our drains from our house, be it sanitary or foundation water or otherwise, and we sent it over to Lake Winnebago. We again became modern and said we need to treat our sewage, so we shipped it over the other way, away from the lake and over to a sewage treatment plant. But even in those 30 years where we became more modern, if we didn't know that we were already directing our stormwater and we turned it the other way, we have a lot of laterals that were built in a lot of older homes, and they're going, they don't even know that they switched it and are shipping it to the treatment plant. For the most part, I would say, and we've talked about this, if you have a property south of Murdoch, north of 20th, which is a pretty large area, and perhaps east of Sawyer, and you do not know that you can demonstrate that you don't have a cross connection of your groundwater or clear water into the sanitary system, chances are you probably are directing your water to the sanitary, which is illegal, but you don't know that that's happening, and that's the problem that people don't necessarily know.
How would they go about finding out if it is or not?
Now I'm going to go back to Dave.
We would work with them. They can call the plumbing inspector. Many people don't want to find that information out because it's going to cost you money to put in a sump pump, to reconnect your floor drains or your your drain tile, and separate it from your floor drains and your sanitary sewer system. So, you know, while we think that a lot of people don't know, I think there's a good portion that do know, but it's going to cost money, and that's one thing we have to look at with our utility, with our wastewater utility, because if the area that Mark talked about is more of a moderate or low income area and these people can't pay to fix their lateral, to install a sump pump, to put a backflow preventer in, how can we help? And that's the sort of program we have to look at developing. That'll likely cause a increased cost on our wastewater utility bill, but if we want to get the clear water out and stop problems in the sanitary sewers, we have to be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
One of the people who were impacted by the May 3rd storm looked upon it as saying, we need to incur these costs because otherwise it's really a hidden tax or a hidden cost onto the people whose basements are getting backed up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a legitimate point. We do need to do that, but
because you're paying higher insurance, you're paying to clean up, you're paying for the stuff you're throwing away. That's all extra money that you're spending whether you want to or not.
So you're going to see a very classic, public policy debate going on because the people who are getting impacted are not necessarily the people who are causing it. I mean, you can do the backflow preventer, but as the one gentleman pointed out to me, well, let's say we all put a backflow preventer in. Well, if that happens, we still have the clear water problem.
Right.
It's going to come somewhere. It's going to come up through the system somewhere. Even if we all dutifully put in backflow preventers, Mother Nature is going to push it up. So we do have to address it one way or another, and we have to balance those issues with people who say, this is going to make it unaffordable for me to live here, or it's going to be unaffordable for me to rent here. And those are the challenges we're going to have, and we need to find a way to make it an incentive or encourage people to do this because they recognize it's going to benefit me as well as everybody else. And we still have a lot of education to do on that, and I don't think everybody understands it. Plus, when you have these brand new streets done, you're expecting, okay, my problem's solved, but it's a very complex problem that we're continuing to go after.
Looking at what happened after May 2nd, what made you guys feel good? What worked and what didn't work, just in general?
Well, I'm going to cautiously, say what worked and what didn't
Okay.
work, because if you had your basement backed up, we failed you. And I understand that criticism. I accept it, but it's 100 years in the making. And
Right.
Dave and I are getting gray, but we weren't around at that time.
I understand.
And in probably our 5 predecessors before us weren't necessarily.
Yep.
I mean, it goes back that far.
I understand.
But on the stormwater side, I'm very pleased with where we put in improvements.
Okay.
We had really good results.
Melvin Avenue?
Melvin Avenue, as ugly as that
Yeah.
building may be to some
Yeah.
people that live on Hazel, it worked like a charm.
Stein Plaza?
Stein Plaza, go ask
Okay.
the folks who own that, go ask the folks
Okay.
in Benvenuto's,
Okay.
all those, and even the people on Westfield talked to Dave
Okay.
the day after and said, we had no problems over there. So that worked very well.
Okay.
And that's because of the detention ponds that you put in?
And a box storm sewer that connected
Okay.
to it. From Highway 41, we had a large box storm sewer that connected to it.
Okay.
But and another location that you asked about is Ohio. So it depended on where you were on Ohio. If you were south of 9th, that's in a Stringham, it's called Stringham Creek watershed. Well, we haven't got to that area. But if you're north of 9th, where we had flooding on 8th and some of those other areas in 2008, well, you didn't see flooding in that area because we had storm sewers to solve that flooding problem.
And those are all recent projects that you people have done, and they worked.
Right.
How about out in West Haven? Because the West,
Yep. No,
the
good
detention
question.
pond
Yeah.
out there
Yes.
was a controversial issue for a very long time, and you did end up putting one in, albeit not necessarily in the exact spot where it had been first proposed. But how did that work for those folks out there?
That
And
worked very
I
well.
just have to interrupt. It's a completely different concept of what we did. We did a much smaller drainage area to help problems on the West Haven Circle and the Newport Circle area. The original approach was a much more comprehensive. So it did work very well, as Mark indicated.
But very localized.
Very localized.
I mean, Newport Circle, very good results. But in terms of the rest of Sawyer Creek and Campbell Creek, not necessarily. Over near Maricopa,
Dickinson, those areas over there.
Dickinson, that's still not been
No.
resolved.
And the West Haven Golf Course the front 9 was...
It looked like mud was flowing.
Exactly, yeah.
But that goes to our future projects.
I understand, yeah.
And that's where we do need to continue to go forth. And I'm going to defend Dave on something that happened probably, 6 years ago. Dave originally had proposed some projects around 9th and Washburn. There was some pushback. Let's not do this project. We want some development to occur there. Why don't you find another location? And Dave came up with another good idea. Both are good, but none were acceptable. And that one pushed it over to West Haven Golf Course, and you know all the hoopla that happened with that.
Yep.
And so somebody said, well, why don't you go over to 9th and Washburn? Why didn't you ever think of that? Well, Dave did. And memories are a little short sometimes on that. And so now we have just finished purchasing the properties at 9th and Washburn, and that's a project that we'll do next year, Dave?
We're showing it in 2014.
2014. Okay, so it'll take a little time because we've got to go through design issues. That'll help a little bit. Meanwhile, this year we're going to do James Road. You heard me mention how Sawyer Creek was flowing and it looked like mud.
Right,
That's coming from rural areas.
right. And that's a
not
huge project you're going to do, isn't it?
Sawyer Creek's about 10,000 acres total.
Okay.
And about a third of that, the upper part of the watershed, really converges in this area around James Road where we're proposing to put this pond. What that'll do at the very upper portion of that watershed, it'll hold back that water. And so a third of the watershed will be held back. That will have significant results. Meanwhile, this summer, next Tuesday, Council's going to award a bid to do some dredging at the bottom of Sawyer Creek. So you're going to clean that out. And that'll get the water at the bottom of the watershed out into the river as soon as possible. So then we've really managed the upper and the lower to a large degree. Not completely, but to a large degree. That'll give us some breathing room to handle larger volume storms. A storm like that would still be tough, but it would minimize the damage. I drove around that morning and got caught in one of the sort of the mini waves of storms that came, and Oakwood near 9th was flooded. 9th near the hospital entrance was flooded, and it was you could see the water flowing, and it was brown. That's coming from the rural areas. So if we can hold that back, it'll also keep the sediment from going there too. We're going to have a lot of features with that. So, Dave, anything else in that project that people want to know about?
Those are the two big projects for this year on Sawyer Creek. But another area that you wanted to know, areas that had positive results, we built a detention basins a couple years ago in the area of Baldwin and New York.
Okay, that thing that runs by the track there?
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
And so there'd always been flooding north of New York in the area of Tennessee, and we got calls from people, we didn't have any flooding.
But the issue is we have 120 plus watersheds in the city.
I know.
And those take care of some areas,
Yeah.
but we still have more to do. Yeah. So we just got to keep
What
forging ahead.
surprised you most about something that you guys hadn't anticipated, either good or bad, that showed up after? Wow, this happened. This was good. Oh, this happened. It wasn't good. Anything?
I think, as Mark said, where we were able to complete improvements, it was gratifying to see how a detention basin by Tipler School, it gets full of water. And there's many people in the community that go look at it and say, is it holding water? Well, yes, it is holding water. And actually, that's the funny thing about the rain. The airport might have showed 3 3/4 inches of rain, but the wastewater treatment plant a mile or two away had over 5 inches. So up at Tennessee, maybe they only had the 3 inches. So each area was handling the water different, but where we had improvements, I don't think we had any surprises. I think we've had good consultants help us, good analysis, good computer modeling, and I think the results show it.
Good. I just want to ask one question here before we're out of time, and it doesn't have anything to do with a storm necessarily. In anticipation of this show, someone asked me to ask a question because it directly affects them. They had a neighbor who changed the grading of their particular property, their home, and now when there are heavy rains like we've been having recently, the storm runoff is running down this grade that has been altered, and it's flooding out this other person. What can they do?
Well, I would say the first thing they should do is come up and talk to people in the engineering division, because depending on if it's an area that is a new subdivision or an old subdivision, if it's a new subdivision, there are restrictions, there are grading and drainage plans. We can check those plans. We run into that where subdivisions are built, houses are built, and the drainage features are put in, but then the original homeowner sells, the next homeowner comes in and says, boy, I don't like the way this is, it's built with certain grading features, and the second person says, I don't like this. They start filling things in, then a neighbor 1 or 2 houses away says, you're messing up my property, and we get involved because, the grading plans are approved, and you're not supposed to alter it to affect your neighbors.
Okay.
So that would be
talk
the
to
first
you
thing.
guys.
Come to engineering and talk to
Okay.
them.
do.
All right, good. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your
Yeah.
being here.
Yeah.
You were just here a few weeks ago, and here you are again.
Always glad to help.
Well, sorry we don't have another trophy for you
That's
tonight.
okay. I'm working towards another one.
All right, you'll get there. All right, thanks guys very much.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you. And we will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.